In a kingdom where the river stitched silver through the fields, the youngest princess loved the hour when sunlight caught the water and turned it to gold. She would slip from lessons, cross the orchard where pears hung like lamps, and make her way to an old well hidden by willows. The well was older than the palace. It held stories as cool and deep as its water. There she sat with her favorite toy, a golden ball the size of an apple, polished smooth by her restless hands. She tossed it high, watched the sky hold it for a breath, and caught it again, the metal warm like a living thing. On a day when clouds piled like ships on the horizon, she tossed the ball too high. A breeze, not strong but sure, tipped it off its invisible course. It tumbled, kissed the stone rim, and dropped into the well. There was the smallest sound, like a coin agreeing to a bargain, then nothing. The circle of water closed its eye. The princess stared into the dark. She had other jewels, gifts with names to appease old alliances, gowns that whispered when she walked, and shoes that sang on marble. None of that mattered. The golden ball was a promise of childhood kept in her pocket. She felt suddenly small, as if the sky had grown while her eyes were closed. "Why such a faces like rain?" asked a voice near and low. She looked up, then down, then all around, until she saw him, a frog, the color of polished moss, sitting on the lowest stone. His eyes were bright coins. His mouth held the curve of someone who knew the shape of many answers. "I lost my ball," she whispered, embarrassed to be speaking to a creature who usually went unremarked. "My favorite." "Ah," said the frog, and if a frog can sound thoughtful, this one did. "If I were to fetch it for you," he continued, "what would you give me in return?" "Anything," she said too quickly. "Jewels, ribbons, a plate of sugared cherries, anything." The frog tilted his head. "I do not eat cherries, and jewels do not suit me. I ask instead for your companionship, your place at table, your chair by the fire, your cup to drink from, your promise to let me rest upon a soft cushion beside you in the evening. Treat me not as a pet, but as a guest." The princess, certain this was a jest, smiled and nodded. "Yes," she said, waving away the oddness of it. "Anything. Only bring back my ball." "Say it plainly," the frog replied. "Words that are clear can be remembered." She sighed, dramatic as only the young can be. "If you bring back my ball," she said, "I promise to share my table, my cup, and my companionship, and to let you rest on a cushion beside me at night." The frog slid from the stone with a small sound and disappeared into the well. Moments passed, longer than she liked. She leaned close, and her reflection bent toward her like a stranger. Then the frog rose. The ball balanced on his head like a second sun. He lifted it to the stone with care. The princess seized it, laughter returning, as if it had only stepped outside for air. "Thank you," she said, already turning, already running. Behind her, a voice called, not angry, but steady, "Remember your promise." The wind gathered the words and hung them on the willow leaves where she did not have to hear them if she did not choose to. That evening, the court dined under a painted ceiling that showed saints and storms. The princess told no one of the well or the frog or the promise braided out of convenience. She thought of it as one thinks of a dream after morning. The servants had just brought in bowls of soup fragrant with herbs when a small, deliberate sound came from the far end of the hall, a knock, wet and patient. A footman frowned. The knocking continued. At the princess's feet, something cleared its throat. The frog, damp with travel but dignified, looked up. "Open to your guest," he said, and to the astonishment of the nearest courtiers, the doors swung wide. The frog hopped in, not hurrying, not proud, only sure. He stopped beneath the princess's chair and raised his gaze. "Here I am," he said. "I have come to sit at table beside you, as you promised." The hall stilled the way a lake stills when the wind has forgotten what it meant to do. The princess flushed. "Father," she said, almost laughing, "it's only a frog." I spoke foolishly. The king, who had made and kept more promises than his daughter had years, set down his spoon. His beard was winter gray. His eyes were autumn-wise. "Only a frog, is it? The shape of the seeker does not shrink the size of the promise. If we keep our word only when it suits us, we do not have words at all, only weather vanes. Let your guest be served." Reluctance walked the princess to her duty. A cushion was placed on a small stool by her chair. The frog took it with a nod and settled, his legs a tangle of angles, his eyes always steady. She tried not to look at him, and found that not looking was work. He did not drop his spoon or slurp. He did not chatter or demand. He ate what could be eaten and left what could not, with quiet courtesy. When her cup came round, he asked, "Might I?" She held it a little too high, a little too long, then lowered it until his mouth could touch the rim. He drank, not greedily, but with evident gratitude. The courtiers, denied the sport of easy mockery by the king's presence, pretended to be fascinated by their napkins. The queen watched with the small smile of someone who knows where the seams are and what holds them. After the music and the last sweet, came the hour when the palace divided itself. Those who sought talk went to talk. Those who loved cards went to cards, and those who loved the moon went to it across long galleries. The princess stood to escape, but the frog cleared his throat. "You promised me a place by the fire," he said, "and a cushion." She would have preferred 1,000 other things, yet she nodded again and went, and he followed, not close enough to crowd, not far enough to be forgotten. In the quiet room where the fire listened to itself, she chose the farthest chair and sat very straight. The frog found a small cushion and, without climbing, rested upon it as one might rest upon a thought. He said nothing. The silence was not empty. It was a well in which one might hear one's own voice if one leaned far enough. After a long while, the princess sighed. "Are you comfortable?" "Yes," he said. "Thank you for keeping your word." It was not easy. Easy promises are rarely worth making. They sat until the fire lowered its eyelids. A clock somewhere in the house remembered to be time. The frog spoke again, very softly. "You also promised that I might rest on a soft cushion beside you at night. I ask not for your bed, which belongs to your sleep, but for a place in your room, so I might be near the person I trusted when I chose to fetch what you had lost." The words were so plain that the princess had no foothold for refusal. She rose and led him down corridors that knew her footsteps. In her room, bells in a bowl kept the moonlight company. She set a pillow near her bed and a small saucer of water beside it. The frog settled onto the pillow with a careful gratitude. "Is this enough?" she asked. "For tonight," he said. "Rest well." But it was not the princess who slept first. She lay awake, thinking of wells and bargains, of how lightly she had given words the frog was now carrying like a lantern. She thought of her father's face, stern not from anger, but from love of something larger than the moment. She slept and dreamt of water that remembered every stone it had ever touched. The frog did not sleep at once either. He gazed at the ceiling where moonscape shadows moved, and he thought of distances. His life had been long by some measures and short by others. He remembered a night, years ago or yesterday, when a young man had made an unwise promise to a woman who knew many names, and how that night had folded him into this shape. He remembered the conditions set upon his undoing, not a kiss stolen or a demand forced, but a promise held to the last syllable, honored not from fear, but from recognition. Morning came with soft insistence. The princess found the frog sitting as she had left him, composed and uncomplaining. He asked nothing as she dressed. He watched the light discover the room. When she offered him water, he drank. When she offered him a place in her pocket as she walked the garden, because suddenly the idea of abandoning him on the floor felt unkind, he refused. "I can follow," he said, and he did, small and steady. Days arranged themselves like beads on a string. The princess learned that the frog enjoyed the warmth at the edge of the fireplace, tolerated loud music with philosophical patience, and preferred the scent of mint leaves to roses. He asked for little. He watched a great deal. Sometimes, when she forgot to be annoyed, she found comfort in his quiet company, as if honesty had learned to sit beside her in a green suit. Of course, there were moments when she wished him gone. A prince's letter arrived, and she felt the old world tug at her sleeves. A hunt was planned, and she longed to ride far enough that no one could find her. Each time, the frog was there, not preventing, only present, reminding her of the promise not by words, but by being. On the 7th night, when the moon was a thin coin too small to buy anything, the palace went very still. The princess returned late to her room after failing to enjoy a dance. The frog, as ever, waited on his pillow. She stopped in the doorway, tired in a way that had nothing to do with her bones. "I have kept my promise," she said, and for the first time there was no edge to it, no proof asked, no proof offered. But I kept it with my hands and not my heart. That seems like only half the truth. The frog's eyes were old in that moment and very gentle. "Promises begin in the mouth," he said, "but they finish in the heart. Only then do they have the power to change anything." She knelt so that they were level. "I did not choose this at first. I choose it now. Will you accept my companionship as something freely given?" He made a small sound, not quite a laugh. "I have already received it." Then, after a pause, "Would you do me one more kindness, not demanded, not owed?" "If I can," she said. "Lift me," said the frog, "and set me upon the cushion of your bed's footboard, where I might see the window and the stars, just for this night." This seemed a strange request compared to all that had preceded it. She slipped her hands under his cool, careful body and placed him on the soft end of the bed. He settled, still as a sealed letter. The princess lay down and watched the sky, bright where the city slept, dark where the orchard kept its counsel. A peace came into the room like someone who knows which floorboards to avoid. She did not know she was crying until she tasted salt. The frog said nothing, but in the quiet she felt as if she held a thread that led out of the well and into the world. At dawn, a sound woke her, not the ordinary footfalls of servants, not the scrape of the garden gate, something like a bell rung under water. She sat up. On the footboard where the frog had rested sat a young man, pale with wonder, his hair damp as if he had just risen from a lake. He wore a simple shirt and an expression of someone who has come back from a long forgetting. He put a hand to his chest, then to his mouth, as if searching for familiar maps. "Do not be afraid," he said quickly, his voice low and bright with disbelief. "I am the frog. Or I was. Years ago I angered a witch by breaking a promise I had never intended to keep. She taught me the weight of words. She said I would be free when I met someone who carried a promise to its end with both hands. The princess, whose first impulse was always honesty, whispered, 'I almost did not.' 'Almost is not the end,' he replied softly. You finished it." They stood in a silence that did not demand to be filled. Outside, the palace began its day. Somewhere, a cook scolded a boy for stealing figs. The prince, if prince he wore no ring, no crest, only humanity, lowered his eyes. "I will go," he said, "if you wish it. I ask nothing more of you. A promise kept is not a debt that multiplies." "Wait," said the princess, and she surprised herself by smiling. "Will you have breakfast with me?" "Not as a frog I am learning not to resent, but as a guest I would like to know." They ate in the little room by the fire, which suddenly felt larger. The prince told her of the long green years when thoughts moved slowly and patience was a type of muscle. She told him of the wall of eyes that was court and the quicksand that was expectation. He did not offer grand gestures. She did not ask for them. They let the morning make them brave by inches. When the king learned what had happened, he nodded once, as if he had been waiting for the world to catch up with itself. The queen sent for more tea and said, "We will need new cushions," because mothers know that what changes the most are the small things. News ran like a creature that enjoys running. People told the story as people will. Some said the princess kissed a frog and that was the magic. Others said a certain witch had stopped by with a shopping list and a change of heart. Those inside the palace did not argue with the versions. Truth has many doors. What mattered was this: a promise kept had mended 2 lives and set a new pattern on the loom. The princess walked more often by the willows. Sometimes the prince went with her. They threw no balls into wells. They lowered only buckets and drew up stories. He took pleasure in the company of musicians. She found she could sit through councils without biting the inside of her cheek. In time, they loved one another, not as reward, not as destiny completed, but as a daily choosing. They spoke carefully when they made promises, then kept them without letting impatience eat holes in the cloth. As for the old well, it kept its memories. If you leaned over it on a bright day, you might see, between your eyes and the sky's patience, a glint that is not entirely sunlight. People say the willows grew greener there after that year. The servants swore the kitchen clock ran truer. No one could prove such things, but the kingdom seemed to breathe more easily, as if it had been holding a note for too long. And the moral, if you need one, is not that kisses fix everything or that witches are always watching. It is this: promises are bridges you must build from both sides. The mouth can begin, only the heart can finish. True promises do not trap, they transform. They free the one who receives and the one who keeps. So if on some afternoon you lose what you love and a small voice offers help in exchange for something that sounds inconvenient, think carefully, speak plainly, mean it. You may find that what is returned to you is more than a golden ball. You may find a way to be exactly who you said you were, no more, no less, and learn that such honesty is the oldest enchantment in the world.